It was during the persecution of those days by the leading religious authorities against any expression of religion in any other language except Latin that a young man named Thomas Bilney used to walk these streets in Cambridge. He had been soundly converted to Christ by reading the Greek New Testament of Erasmus, and immediately trying to share his faith had gone to the White Horse Inn, where the sophists of his generation used to meet. It was the Mars Hill. The end result of his meeting there was that many of the leading professors at Cambridge University here were being converted to Christ. That immediately attracted attention. And among the people that came from different parts of England to this university was a young man named William Tyndale. He was an excellent Greek scholar. In fact, he was so well versed with 7 different languages that no stranger could determine which one was his native tongue. And he was a very committed man. In an argument one day, his debater said, "We had better be without God's law than the Pope's." Tyndale fired back at his opponent, "I defy the Pope and all his laws. And if God spare me, I will one day make the boy that drives the plough in England to know more of the Scripture than the Pope does." These are the fields on which Tyndale watched commoners ploughing constantly. They're situated on the Cotswold Hills, and that is the Severn Valley. It's little Sodbury Manor, owned in those days by Sir John Walsh. Walsh lived here with his wife and his 2 boys, and Tyndale was hired to become the tutor of those 2 boys. This little attic room happens to be the private room of William Tyndale while he worked for the Walsh family. Here he slept, and here he kept his books, and here he studied. The idea came to him that if the Greek New Testament had such a profound effect upon the scholastic world, what would an English Bible do for ploughboys? At this very spot, he decided he was going to translate the Greek New Testament into English. He worked on the project while he was here for 6 months. Then he realized that it was jeopardizing the Walsh family's life. So he left here and he went to London. He tried to get the Bishop of London, Bishop Tunstall, to give him official permission for what he was doing, but Tunstall would not do it. So he self-imposed an exile on himself, went over to the continent, met with Martin Luther, and found a great friend in Luther. He finished the work of translation and then started on the problem of having it printed. That was a very difficult problem for him to solve, because the English had decided they were going to do everything to make it impossible. They put a price on his head. And so he lived in poverty, crisscrossed his paths. He was, on one occasion, they were coming in the front door to arrest him in the print shop when he gathered whatever documents he could and went out into the night in the back door. And he lived like that. But one holy passion gave him and made him indefatigable in his energy. He wanted to finish this work. And eventually, in December of 1525, his work was completed. And a new phase began. How is he going to get these Bibles smuggled into England? Would you believe that that all has something to do with this? A bag of flour? I'm standing now where the port of London was in the days of William Tyndale. It was run by German authorities, and if you remember, Tyndale spent 6 months here before his self-exile over to the continent, and during that time he didn't waste it. He became acquainted with these authorities. He got to know them so well that they would help him when he wanted to get his Bibles into this country. Or the flour. Well, that came into this port as well. It was in sacks. And in the middle of those sacks of flour, Tyndale's Bibles. They came in such a large number, they spread all over the country and took England like a shock wave. It's a little bit ironic, but right across the street, he stands in the form of a statue, and he's looking down right on the place where his Bibles were smuggled into this country. thousands and thousands of his Bibles came into England. But why, today, is there only one completed copy of that 1526 New Testament? A man named Tunstall was the Bishop of London at the time of William Tyndale, and he was Tyndale's bitter enemy. He did everything that he could to frustrate what Tyndale had in mind, and whenever he could find one of the Bibles, he would bring it here to St. Paul's Cathedral and ceremoniously put it on fire. It was here that he fervently preached against what William Tyndale was trying to accomplish. He was so frustrated that he decided he would go to the extreme measure of getting all the money available he could get, go over to the continent and buy all the Bibles to be bought and bring them all here, burn them, and that would be the end of it all. He had a man by the name of Augustine Pakistan, and Pakistan was a merchantman that did a lot of trade over there. He asked Pakistan if he would arrange to buy all the Bibles that he could find. Pakistan agreed. But what Tunstall didn't know, Pakistan was a friend of William Tyndale's. When he bought the Bibles, he paid 4 times the price of a Bible in order to buy one, allowing Tyndale to reprint 3 in place of it. And so it turned out to be that the very man who was trying to destroy the project was actually paying the cost of it. However, in 1535, Tyndale was captured. It was a friend that betrayed him. He spent 1.5 years in the castle at Vulvord, working on the translation of the Old Testament. That was his life's passion, and he couldn't get away from it. And then in October of 1536, they took him out to die. He was tied to a stake where the timber was around to ignite and burn him to death. But there's another part to that. They put 2 holes in the stake. They threaded a piece of wire through those holes that went around the throat of Tyndale, and they determined that he would die by strangulation as well as by burning at the same time. The last chapter in a great man's life, and the last words that he spoke just before, when the flames were coming up and before they pulled the wire: "Lord, open the eyes of the King of England."